The room was packed. Reporters shoulder to shoulder, cameras rolling, microphones pointed like weapons. It wasn't just another press conference. You could feel it in the air. Something was going to explode. Pam Bondi walked in through the side curtain with steady steps and a stare that cut through the chatter like a knife. She wasn't here to smile, pose, or play nice. She took her place at the podium with a calmness that came from years of being underestimated and years of proving people wrong. The flash of cameras flickered across her face, but she didn't flinch. She adjusted the microphone, glanced at the cue cards in front of her, then ignored them entirely. "Good afternoon," she said. "I'll make my opening statement brief, then I'll take your questions." She spoke for 3 minutes, sharp and focused, outlining policy positions, ongoing legal actions, and initiatives her office had taken. There was nothing controversial in her tone. Not yet. But in the third row, a hand shot up before she'd even finished her final sentence. It was her, Chloe Rendell, liberal political correspondent, known for ambush-style interviews, viral moments, and questions that sounded more like accusations. She had a reputation for getting under people's skin, and she knew it. Pam's eyes flicked toward her, and for a brief second, the two women locked eyes. Neither blinked. Pam pointed. "Yes, you." Chloe stood up with the confidence of someone who already knew how she was going to frame the headline. "Attorney General Bondi," she began, voice overly polite, "given your role in overseeing legal ethics and justice, do you believe your own personal history, specifically your ties to certain political donors and early career controversies, reflect the transparency you expect from others?" A beat of silence followed. Some heads turned, others smiled uncomfortably. Pam didn't answer right away. She leaned slightly forward, both hands on the podium. "I'm sorry, was there a legal question in that, or just your opinion wrapped in a headline?" she asked, her tone cool but firm. Chloe didn't hesitate. "It's a question about credibility. Don't you think the public deserves to know more about the ethics of someone tasked with enforcing them?" Pam gave a tight smile. "I'm sure they do. And they have, repeatedly, for years. The difference is, they've moved on. You haven't." A small murmur rose from the crowd. Chloe pressed on. "So you're saying there's no conflict in leading legal efforts while having benefited from undisclosed donor relationships early in your career?" Pam's eyes narrowed slightly. "I've disclosed everything required by law. If you have proof of otherwise, you're welcome to hand it over to the appropriate authorities. Until then, what you're doing is called political theater." Chloe smirked. "I think the public deserves accountability." Pam's tone sharpened. "No, what you think the public deserves is your version of accountability, which usually means taking someone you dislike and dragging them through mud. Facts optional." Chloe opened her mouth to fire back, but Pam raised a hand. "No, I'm not done." Her voice was suddenly louder, not shouting but clear enough that every camera in the room leaned in. "You want to talk about my past? Fine. I've been open about every step I've taken, every mistake I've made, and every fight I've picked. I didn't get here by pretending to be perfect. I got here by being better prepared, better equipped, and frankly, tougher than the people who tried to tear me down." The room had fallen completely silent. Chloe tried again, this time her voice a little tighter. "So you admit—" Pam didn't let her finish. "What I admit is that I've had enough of you hiding behind your press pass to play prosecutor. This is a press conference, not a witch hunt." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the junior reporters in the back nearly dropped their phone. Pam stepped away from the podium, just slightly. "You've asked your question. You've made your headline. You're done here." Chloe stood frozen for a beat, unsure if this was posturing or real. Pam turned to the nearby security guard. "Please escort Ms. Rendell out. Her press privileges here are revoked until further notice." The room exploded. Dozens of reporters yelled questions at once. Cameras surged forward. Chloe tried to protest, but the guard was already at her side, gently motioning toward the exit. Pam didn't look at her again. She turned back to the podium, adjusted the mic, and spoke clearly into the nearest camera. "Anyone else have a legal question?" The reporters hesitated. None dared go next. Pam scanned the room with a calm stare that dared them to try. No one moved. And in that moment, it was clear. She wasn't just in control of the podium. She owned the entire room. The room hadn't quite recovered. Chloe Rendell was gone, escorted out under the stunned gaze of half the press corps, but her presence still lingered like static in the air. Pam Bondi stood tall behind the podium, unwavering. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't rattled. In fact, she looked more composed now than she had when the conference began. The reporters hadn't expected that. They expected her to dodge, maybe deflect, maybe spin her way through it like any polished politician. They hadn't expected her to stare a liberal journalist in the face, cut through the accusation, and throw her out of the room, live, on camera, in front of the nation. And now every remaining reporter had to make a decision, test her boundaries or stay in their lane. A reporter from the fourth row slowly raised his hand, cautiously. Pam looked at him and nodded once. "Go ahead." He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, with respect, some critics are already calling your response excessive. Don't you think removing a journalist sends the wrong message, especially about transparency?" Pam's answer was immediate. "No, I think it sends exactly the right messaging," she said, which is that this podium isn't a playground for people pushing political vendettas dressed up as journalism. Her voice was controlled but steely, not angry, more but deliberate. "You want to ask me hard questions? Go ahead. Ask about law, policy, precedent. That's what I'm here for. But the second someone turns a press briefing into a personal interrogation about matters already vetted, disclosed, and settled, we're done." She leaned forward just slightly, hands gripping both sides of the podium. "And let's stop pretending that wasn't the goal. That reporter didn't come here to inform the public. She came here to provoke me, to create a moment, to get a clip that would go viral on Twitter before the facts ever caught up." The cameras zoomed in, capturing every controlled word. Pam's tone grew colder. "Unfortunately for her, I've been through real battles. Legal ones, political ones, personal ones. And if she thought I was going to stand here and play the punching bag for the entertainment of her followers, she picked the wrong target." Silence again. Pam stepped back from the podium just a bit, exhaled softly through her nose, then straightened. "I respect the press. I've always respected the press. But I do not, and will not, respect manufactured outrage masquerading as journalism." Another reporter, this time a woman from a major news network, spoke up, her voice hesitant. "But aren't you concerned about the optics?" Pam smirked slightly, the first real shift in her expression. "Optics," she repeated. "I'm not a theater director. I'm the Attorney General. My job isn't to make things look fair. It's to be fair. And being fair doesn't mean letting someone take shots at me while I smile politely and absorb the blows." Her gaze swept across the room, locking with faces that now carried a mix of caution and reluctant respect. "You want to report on what happened here today? Do it. Use the footage. Quote every word. But make sure you tell the whole story. Make sure you mention that she was warned, that she was pushing false insinuations, that she was trying to bait me." Pam paused, then added, her voice lower, firmer, "And make sure you include this. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't walk away. I stood here, and I handled it. Because unlike some people, I don't need theatrics to make a point." That landed. One of the younger reporters in the back muttered, "Damn," without realizing he'd said it out loud. Pam glanced at him and almost smiled. Then, without missing a beat, she returned to business. She answered 5 more questions. One about ongoing litigation, another about a new statewide policy proposal, 2 about federal coordination, and the final from a journalist who seemed almost apologetic to speak. "Would you do it again?" he asked. Pam didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said simply, "and I'll tell you why. Because there are too many people in power who've gotten used to being afraid. Afraid of backlash, afraid of headlines, afraid of being misquoted, misrepresented, or misunderstood. And while they are busy trying not to offend anyone, they forget how to lead." She took a breath. "I didn't come here to survive this role. I came here to serve, to lead. And sometimes that means standing your ground, even when a dozen cameras are pointed at your face and everyone's waiting to see if you'll crack." She looked into the lens of the nearest camera, as if speaking directly to everyone watching from home. I won't crack. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. With that, she gathered her notes, stepped back from the podium, and walked off the stage. The room didn't erupt in applause. It didn't need to. What had just happened didn't call for celebration. It called for respect. Pam Bondi had done what most officials never dared. She didn't placate. She didn't apologize. She made a line in the sand and stood behind it with both feet planted. And the reporter who tried to rattle her, she was already forgotten. But Pam's message, that would echo long after the room had emptied. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire and challenge us to grow. What would you have done if you were in her shoes? Let us know in the comments below.